As the chief forensic examiner at Singa Hospital, I had grown accustomed to the strange hours and even stranger cases. But that night, something felt different. I was 29, experienced enough to recognize when something unsettling lingered beneath the surface of a case, and this time it began with a knock on my door. After a grueling shift, I had returned home to finally rest. But just as I was dozing off, a sharp knock jolted me awake. I checked the clock, nearly midnight. I got up and, to my surprise, opened the door to see my best friend, Rohan, standing there. His face was tense, his eyes shadowed with worry. "A body came into the hospital," he said, his voice low. "There's been an incident. A body just came in, a murder. They need you to perform the autopsy right away. It's complicated." "They need an autopsy right away," Rohan said. "All right, give me a second," I told. I grabbed my coat without a second thought. Rohan had always been calm, collected, yet tonight he seemed different, almost as if something weighed heavily on him. As we drove through the dark, empty streets, I glanced at him from the corner of my eye. He sat there, staring out the window, his face shrouded in an expression I couldn't quite place. I tried to break the silence with a little joke. "What's wrong? Don't tell me you're spooked by a dead body?" He gave a faint smile but didn't look at me. "It's not that. It's just painful." The words barely made it past his lips. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but something in his tone told me not to press further. When we arrived, the hospital was eerily quiet. No other staff seemed to be around as we made our way through the dim corridors to the morgue. The atmosphere felt heavy, like the building itself was holding its breath. Once inside, I switched on a single overhead lamp, casting cold light across the body bag lying on the table. As I opened the bag, my breath caught. The face of the corpse was severely disfigured, unrecognizable. A strange, uneasy chill washed over me. I had seen countless bodies, but something about this one was different, unsettling. My hands trembled slightly as I began the autopsy. Out of nowhere, I felt a presence behind me. I turned around to find Rohan staring at the corpse, his face blank, his eyes empty. I had never seen him like that before. It was as if he wasn't even really there. After a long, silent moment, he turned and left the room without a word. He left without even giving me a chance to say something. As he walked away, I noticed something on his wrist, a small scar, a distinct mark I'd seen many times. But when I looked down at the corpse, my stomach twisted. There, on the body, was the same mark. "That's impossible," I felt. My whole body broke out in a cold sweat from an unimaginable fear. The eerie chill became a jolt of fear. I hurried out of the morgue, calling his name. "Rohan? Rohan?" But the corridors were empty. The only sound was a faint dripping echoing down the hall. I followed it, leading me to a nearby bathroom. Inside, the tap was running, though no one was there. I shut it off and turned, feeling an eerie silence settle around me. "Rohan?" I called out again, my voice echoing, but there was no reply. Just as I stepped out, I saw two police officers approaching me. They handed me a file and told me it contained the identity of the deceased. I opened it, only to feel the ground shift beneath me. The name on the file wasn't a stranger's. It was my best friend's name, Rohan. My mind reeled. He had been with me, guiding me to the hospital, watching as I examined the body. But according to this file, he had already been dead, brought in earlier that night. The realization struck me like a cold wind. I tried to explain, but the officers were already looking at me with knowing, pitying expressions, as if I had lost my mind. I stumbled back into the morgue, my eyes fixated on the lifeless body that now held a face I knew all too well, Rohan's. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I never saw him again, but the memory of his presence, his empty gaze, and that final drive in silence haunted me. I would tell myself, perhaps, that it was just exhaustion or grief, but somewhere deep inside, I knew the truth. Rohan had returned to lead me to his own body, to make sure I'd be the one to discover the secret. In that quiet hospital morgue, I felt the undeniable presence of something far beyond logic, a chilling reminder that sometimes, the dead have their own ways of saying goodbye.